This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. I'm Shweta Kothari, filling in for Kartik Malhotra. On the show today, we'll discuss whether markets are in a consolidation phase with Feroz Aziz in just a while from now. But first up, let's take a look at headlines. Covid-19 makes a comeback with a significant surge in cases across Hong Kong and Singapore, two of Asia's biggest cities, with 164 fresh cases reported in India since 12th of May. A rise in cases especially seen in Kerala, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. And visa applications to Turkiyye and Azerbaijan down by 42% in the wake of recent geopolitical developments that shifted Indian travellers' sentiments dramatically. India is working on a trade deal with the US, which will pan out in 3 stages. Indian officials move to reach an interim agreement before July, when the US President Donald Trump's new reciprocal tariffs are expected to kick in. To speed up negotiations on free trade agreement with the European Union, a team of Indian officials from the Ministry of Commerce left for Brussels on Tuesday to take forward the process where it was left off last week. The visit of the Indian team, led by Chief Negotiator of the India-EU FTA, come within a week of the conclusion of 11th round of negotiations on the agreement. US tariffs continue to weigh in on India and other emerging markets. As per Moody'S, the series of tariffs announced by the US will have negative credit implication for debt issuers across emerging markets. Moody'S warns that much of economies will suffer indirectly through slowing economic growth, declining commodity prices and depreciating currencies. And India's infrastructure output slowed to 0.5% annually in the month of April, as against 4.6% in March of 2025. As per data from Ministry of Commerce, the index tracks activity across 8 sectors, making up 40% of country's total industrial production. Reliance Industries approaches Supreme Court challenging a Delhi High Court order that overturned a 1.7 billion arbitral award in its favour in the long-running Krishna-Godavari Basin gas migration dispute with state-run oil and natural gas company. United States President Donald Trump on Tuesday unveiled new details on his plan for a missile defence system known as the Golden Dome, which is estimated to cost nearly $107 billion. Elon Musk said on Tuesday that he plans to reduce his political spending in the future and remain at helm of electric vehicle major Tesla for at least 5 more years. His comments came after a report suggested that the company's board was planning to oust him. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. Our top story at this hour: India recorded 164 new Covid-19 cases in the week between 12th of May to 19th of May, bringing the country's total active case load to 257, according to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare's latest data. Now, among the states, Kerala is leading with the highest number of active cases at 95, a rise of 69 cases over the past week. Tamil Nadu follows with 66 cases in total, and Maharashtra has recorded 56 active cases, with 44 of those reported in the last 7 days alone. Now, despite this increase, doctors and experts say that these numbers are relatively low as far as India's total population is concerned, so there's no need to worry just as yet. As a result of the rise in number of COVID cases, Sensex and Nifty, remember, declined over 1% on Tuesday, as uncertainty over near-term market prospects prompted traders to cut some of their bullish bets after the recent run-up. Meanwhile, Indian health authorities conducted review meetings led by Directorate General of Health Services to evaluate the current COVID situation. Official sources say that preliminary assessments indicate that recent cases are mostly mild with no unusual severity or mortality reported in hospitalization. So no hospitalization, as a matter of fact, is required so far. Now, this review comes as neighboring regions including Hong Kong and Singapore are reporting a rise in number of cases. Now, Hong Kong's respiratory samples testing positive for COVID have more than doubled in the last 4 weeks alone, rising from 6.21% to 13.66% in the week ending 10th of May. Similarly, Singapore saw a 28% rise in estimated COVID cases last week alone, reaching over 14,000 infections in early May. Experts believe that the current circulating variant is of LF.7, NB.18, which are descendants of the JN1 Omicron variant, which also caused a surge in India last year. So current circulation of the variants are as a result of descendants of JN1 Omicron variant, and that is leading to number of cases surging in India as well as neighboring countries. An official delegation from India's Commerce Ministry is expected to visit Brussels this week to follow up on the next round of negotiations on the proposed free trade agreement with European Union. And according to media sources, the team is likely to depart today following the 11th round of talks that wrapped up in Delhi on 16th of May. As a matter of fact, certain media houses are also reporting that the team may have departed as of yesterday. Now, this visit marks another crucial step in a long-awaited trade pact that both sides are hoping to finalize by the end of the year. A commitment which was reaffirmed by Prime Minister Modi and European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen earlier in the month of February. Remember, India and EU have decided to approach the deal in at least two phases, much like India's trade negotiations with Australia as well as the US. Now, EU is pushing for deep tariff cuts on automobile, medical devices, wine, spirits, meat and poultry. It has also sought stronger intellectual property protection, and on the other hand, India is eyeing greater access for its exports like garments, pharmaceuticals, steel and machinery, which could become far more competitive if the deal goes through. Negotiations between India and the 27 EU bloc had originally been suspended back in 2013, mainly due to disagreements over market access. Talks only resumed in the month of June in 2022 after an 8-year-long hiatus. The ongoing discussions cover 23 broad areas from trades in goods and services to investment, customs, public procurement, dispute resolution and sustainable development. And India and the United States appear to be inching closer to a limited trade deal that could be sealed as early as July this year. According to media sources, both countries are working on an early stage trade agreement which is focusing solely on tariff-related issues, while a broader deal which covers all non-tariff matters may follow later, potentially by October this year. Now remember, India is under pressure to wrap up talks before the US's reciprocal tariffs, which will kick in on 9th of July. The Indian side is hoping to finalize an interim pact that could shield key exports from steep duties while securing tariff relief for labor-intensive sectors like textile, leather and gems and jewelry. Now, sensitive areas like dairy and agriculture, which remain politically delicate in India, are likely to be kept out of at least the first phase of negotiations. Now, from Washington's perspective, the US, wants better market access for India for goods which include automobile, electric vehicles, whiskey, as well as farm products. It is also pushing for India to increase purchases of oil and defense equipment. Meanwhile, deeper discussions around non-tariff barriers, including technology, e-commerce and data storage, are expected to be taken up in the next round, which will come after July. Currently, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal is in the US. He's leading India's efforts to push a deal forward. accompanied by delegation which is led by Special Secretary Rajesh Agrawal. The team is expected to return to India on 23rd of May, which is day after tomorrow. And in a major development, Moody's Ratings has warned that the new wave of tariffs announced by the United States will have negative credit impact for debt issuers in emerging markets, especially those that depend on exports, which includes India. According to a new report by rating agency, companies are most exposed to US-bound goods subject to tariffs face greatest immediate risks. Now, Moody's cautioned that a much larger set of borrowers will feel the heat indirectly through slower economic growth, falling commodity prices, weaker currencies, and a rise in investor risk aversion. Companies in auto and chemical sectors across Latin America, South Asia, and Southeast Asia regions are heavily integrated with global trade, especially with China, and could also feel the heat. Now, Moody's says that Asian economies face the highest levels of exposure given their trade ties with both the US and Chinese supply chains. Now, for governments, especially those dependent on commodity exports, there's another challenge of declining revenues. Those with high foreign currency debt, low reserves, or fragile finances could face capital outflows and worsening investor sentiment. While ports may take the biggest hit from potential trade slump, Moody's says that exposure remains relatively low for airports, toll roads, railways, as well as power projects. Adding to the concern is tariff-induced foreign exchange volatility, which could result in financial losses for many emerging market banks, especially those holding foreign currencies assets than as liabilities. And finally, if central banks cut interest rates to offset slower growth, banks' profitability could take a hit. And in the wake of heightened tensions between India and Pakistan earlier this month, there has been a massive shift in Indian travellers' preferences, with visa applications to Turkey and Azerbaijan dropping by as much as 42%, according to data from visa processing platform Atlas. Now, this shift comes as after Turkey, remember, as well as Azerbaijan, expressed support for Pakistan in the last 10 days leading up to Operation Sindoor and thereafter. And within just 36 hours of escalation, 60% of users applying for visas to these two countries exited the process midway. In response, Atlas has paused all marketing efforts which promote Turkey and Azerbaijan as travel destinations. Now, this is also in long line of other companies in India, especially tour and travelers, who have paused promoting Turkey and Azerbaijan, as well as booking tickets for Turkey and Azerbaijan in the last 1 week. Now, looking back at the first quarter of 2025, visa applications to these countries had actually increased by 64% compared to same period last year. But following the recent events, major metro cities like Delhi and Mumbai saw a steep 53% drop in Turkey-bound visa applications. Tier 2 cities such as Indore and Jaipur experienced a smaller decline of around 20%. Moreover, group visa requests, including family trips, fell by nearly 49%, while solo and couple applications declined by 27%. Earlier media reports highlighted that travel portals and tour operators have already stopped taking bookings for Turkey and Azerbaijan, with cancellations rising by a staggering 260% as of last 1 week alone. So, Turkey and Azerbaijan not being preferred by Indian travelers since the escalating tensions with India and Pakistan. And India's infrastructure output, which tracks activity across 8 core sectors that accounts for nearly 40% of the country's total industrial production, showed a modest growth of 0.5% in April, which is significantly down from 4.6% in the month of March. This as per data released by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The index of 8 core industries measure production across crucial sectors, which include coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizers, steel, cement, and electricity. For the full fiscal year from April of 2024 to March of 2025, the cumulative growth rate stood at 4.5% compared to the same period last year. Now, let's break down the April figures for you. Cement production showed a strong rise of 6.7%, while the steel output grew by 3%. Coal production, which holds a weightage of over 10%, increased by 3.5% compared to April last year. On the other hand, crude oil production slipped by 2.8%, continuing a downward trend, and fertilizer output also fell by 4.2% in the month of April after a sharper decline of 8.8% in the month of March. Natural gas production, contributing around 6.8% to the index, edged up slightly by 0.4%. Electricity generation rose by 1% in April, which is a slowdown from the revised 6.2% growth seen in the previous month. And time for a short break now. We'll be back in just a bit.
This is the drive of your dreams.
You and I, we are dreamers. You and I,
Introducing the all-new Skoda Kailak. Own your dream.
Skoda.
मम्मी से नो अंडा इन समर।
क्यों? तू समर में खेलता नहीं क्या? समर में एनर्जी नहीं लगती क्या? ज्यादा लगती है।
अंडा तो हर सीजन में सुपर हिट है।
सुपरस्टार है ये। सर्दी हो या गर्मी, संडे हो या मंडे,
रोज खाओ अंडे।
News never lies.
But on the twisting highways of headlines, every turn brings a new story.
So buckle up for Pune Highway.
Because the story is going to twist at every turn.
डेड बॉडी कभी झूठ नहीं बोलती।
You will need News 9 to stay with the truth.
Watch News 9.
English news as it should be.
And don't miss our film Pune Highway. In theaters.
23rd May.
Every brand tells a story. And they are the storytellers, the Sutradhars. They present a brand with band, baja and barat to you. They are the Brandwalas.
fertility rates in South India have dropped more sharply.
In the future, you can see it going further down.
Population aging is definitely a cause of concern.
This is an alarming situation. Horror of horrors, the Pollachi horror. Anna University case is despicable.
Of course, there is a political angle everywhere involved.
Can they ever erase the trauma of these Tamil women?
They give a lot of psychological counseling and support to the victims.
Can we still make up?
light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News 9's pick of the week, don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News 9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. I'm Shweta Kothari. Let's quickly take a look at how markets are opening this morning. A check of the mood in the markets on our screens very shortly. We're given to understand markets have opened on a positive note. Nifty 50 up 0.24%, holding just above the 24,740 mark. Sensex up 0.19% at 81,341 mark. Mid cap and small cap feeling the heat for the fourth consecutive day. Mid cap down 0.17% at 56,085. Small cap down 0.27% at 17,434. India VIX, the volatility index, is up almost 1% at 17.54. Joining me on the show is Firoz Aziz to make sense of markets as of this morning. Firoz, thank you very much for taking time out. Just as of yesterday, we were thinking markets likely entering the consolidation phase, but they seem to be rebounding as of this morning.
Yes, Shweta, good morning. Like you rightly said, markets were going down. They went down significantly, about 250 points on Nifty yesterday. When you look at how this whole thing has happened, is that if you look at the net short data of FIIs yesterday, what has happened is they have almost about shorts have gone up from almost about 57% to 63%. That's one of the sharpest short build-ups of FIIs in a single day for just a 250-point move downwards. So yesterday's fall was derivative-led because there was a Sensex expiry yesterday. So the rebound was natural. Anytime you see a derivative-led fall or a rise, the next day reverses that position, at least marginally. So this is the hypothesis which I've tested over the years. Cash market-led rallies build on it, or cash market corrections build on it, but derivative market moves have an opposite direction in the subsequent 1 or 2 days, or at least consolidated moves over the next subsequent days. This one study, which can help most traders, is something is approved again marginally with, of course, 1-2 days data is not what gives you that hypothesis test with significance levels of 90%. But this is good 5-7 years of trading data, at least about 1,000 trading days is what I've analyzed.
In fact, you mentioned FIIs. In fact, FIIs offloaded equities worth 10,000 crore rupees just yesterday. What is leading to the sellout?
There are some block deals as well in that, where there is a change of hands of promoter equity. So I personally think that those are not freely traded shares. So that's why I would not consider. So I would bifurcate FII activity into 2 buckets. Firstly, block deals and non-block deals, point 1. Point 2, FII data also has to be segregated between 3 different categories of FII. And this was an awakening for us when we stopped using FII for every FII. But FIIs have a different behavior. On the basis of their investing pattern and their behavioral pattern, they can be classified into 3. One is those speculative FIIs who buy and sell stocks on the basis of special situations or actively managed funds. That's FII 1. FII 2 are those guys who are investing in index but for themselves, like retirement funds. There is index fund investing, but it is for themselves. The third is index fund investing on MSCI and FTSE indices, like the vanguards of the world. So who invest in index funds. This is in the chronological order of fluidity of money. The last one is the most stable. So if you look at how the second category is added, the third category is added in the last 1.5 months, I'm so happy that the actual stable money has come in and not the fluid money like those hedge funds and those active managers who come and buy and sell India reasonably frequently.
All right. And there's a lot of conversation, Firoz, that the markets declined on the back of rising COVID cases as of yesterday. But that fear seems to be now abated. Is that something that's likely to impact markets going forward, given that there's been a rise of cases today?
That's a very difficult variable to predict. I personally think that COVID cannot give that kind of predictions anymore. Because you would see the second wave and third wave. Lockdown was not the solution of the third wave. So it will not be the solution for the fifth wave or the fourth wave, whatever wave we might want to call it. So any fall due to COVID rises would be, I would see as a buying opportunity. Because any variable which is already discovered does not permanently dampen the market sentiment.
All right. There's been a lot of conversation on defense stocks, and I'd like to bring your attention to that bucket. Defense stocks, there was a massive rally since 7th of May, nearly to the tune of 39%. There's a lot of profit booking there. So a lot of conversation happening on what's the way forward for defense stocks. What's your view there?
I think, Shweta, re-rating of defense stocks has happened. If you look at last financial year, the Nifty Defense Index did 23%. The previous financial year, it did 113%. And this financial year, it has done almost about 33% from 1st of April. So if you look at the kind of re-rating defense stocks have gone, and when we dissect it stock by stock, we realize that several defense stocks have lower free float. So they are going to move up sharply and move down sharply. Every high beta sector has a lesser free float relative to the Nifty's free float as a percentage of the total market cap. So point one I'm making is defense is a high beta stock or a sector. That's point one. Point two, if you ask me where its future is, structurally 3, 4, 5 years, I think it can beat Nifty. Nifty Defense Index can beat Nifty 50 by almost about 6%, 5 to 6% per annum over the next 4 or 5 years. Then coming to from a defense stocks, I think ammunition and consumables are going to have a short-term benefit. Platforms are going to have a long-term benefit in the sector space. Depending on your period, you have to be very bottom-up in picking up what stock in the sector we are talking about.
All right. That is as far as defense is concerned. Another group of stocks that continues to be a point in conversation is auto. There's a lot of pressure on India, Firoz, from the EU, US to cut down on duties as far as auto sector is concerned. How's that likely to impact auto going forward?
I think that's a new variable completely, because Indian auto sector, at least the luxury segment, has been protected extremely. You won't believe it's so absurd to have a 180% duty on certain set of cars. Now, if I'm looking at the UK agreement, now that might come down in the luxury segment for cars manufactured in the UK from 100% to 10%. So I would stay away from auto for the moment, because I would want to discover what are these agreements which are going to be formed. What is its impact? Because any mathematics can only be derived, and its impact can be derived after we know the mathematical formula of what kind of import duties will be there in the long term. So I am keeping away from auto as an allocation for the very reason that there is an unknown variable, and you would want to wait, and there's nothing big which you will miss out. So the risk reward is in favor.
Are you expecting some sort of significant developments there as far as auto is concerned, given, there's been conversation that perhaps duties will be lowered, but there's no clarity at all coming in there as to what extent, because Donald Trump continues to say India is going to do away with tariff on all of its exports, but that hasn't been confirmed by Indian side, Indian officials.
Correct, precisely. I think there's a lot of talk. I would definitely want to not jump the gun and try to discover what it is, and then use those to make a fresh projections of what kind of competitive environment they will operate in.
That is as far as auto is concerned. I also want to quickly, take our viewers through the heat map that's on our screens right now. A mixed bag there, Firoz, as you can see. A lot of positive there for the finances sector, for financial sector, banking and finance sector. Kotak Mahindra Bank down by 0.78%, HDFC Bank up almost 0.5%, ICICI Bank up 0.5%. What are you making of banking and financial pack?
I think the worst is over for the banking and the financial services space. And incidentally, it's the largest weight in Nifty. If you have to have any predictive capability on Nifty, the first thing which you'll have to understand is that 31% of that weightage is in banks. And banks have gone through a real trouble over the last few years for a flat yield curve. From June 2022, when the repo rate started going up, you would see that the repo and the 10-year G-Sec almost became a flat rate. And India is not used to a flat yield curve at all. Like I've told Karthik as well, if you go to ask your parents, would they ever do a 5-year FD if the 1-year FD rate and the 5-year FD rate was same? Most of our parents will say, no, never will I do a 5-year, do away with my money for 5 years and 1 year at the same rate. So what was happening is deposit growth was not happening because senior citizens or whoever are the depositors were not lured enough to give away their money for long periods of time. That's what the flat yield curve had on the deposit, and it's very little spoken about. So once the short end of the yield curve and that cycle has commenced, 2 repo rate cuts have happened. There are 2 more possible. You're looking at inflation coming at the lowest numbers of 3.16 in spite of economy doing well. Direct tax collections last year have gone up by 13.7%. April number of 2.72 lakh crores on GST collection implies that the economy is doing well, but the inflation is going down. That is a very good classic case for the repos to be cut further. So that is going to have a larger impact on the deposit growth and the ease with which you can get long-term deposits and not roll over one-year deposits, which is what the banking system was suffering from. So coming back net, banking is still available at mean PEs or probably half sigma lower than the mean and the median PEs. So it's one space which gives me confidence that it will bring in stability to Nifty over the next 2-3 years. That's what is going to lead the rally.
All right, Firoz, before I let you go, I have to ask you, Moody's came up with its recent assessment of how tariffs are going to play havoc for emerging market economies, including India. And this obviously comes on the back of India and US trying to finalize a trade deal. Possibly first set of that deal would be announced before July when the reciprocal tariffs kick in. And in the light of the politics around tariffs and trade deals, how do you see Indian markets panning out in short to medium term?
I think both in the short to medium term, India is going to benefit out of the trade war. Okay, and there's enough data to suggest that. Of course, Moody's is right in saying there's going to be havoc in emerging market. That could be very short-lived because we are not so dependent on exports to the US. Point 1. Point 2. Currently, we have been praying for over a decade now that we will be China +1. This unsettlement in the global trade order can only benefit India. When all this sedimentation happens, India will be in a better place than what it was. In life, at least in capital markets, you can't ask for short-term benefit and long-term benefit. There could be a short-term detriment, and like we saw, but there'll be bounce backs which will be very, very sharp. So I would not be too worried, and I would see those as buying opportunities, because if you've been praying as a country for years that China +1 hona chahiye, and now this is your stage. Now, will we get to some stage of manufacturing capability to absorb? We don't know. But you're still getting a stage to perform, right? That you were not getting. And that can't be seen as a long-term disadvantage for a country like us. So I personally think that, and one more very important point, why am I not so scared of the trade war? And I don't know whether Moody is factoring in this, is that the trade war could have a different impact on a country like India, because we've already given away 4 lakh crores to FIIs on the pretext of valuation. Valuation ke bahane se 4 lakh crore le gaye ho, to bechoge kya? Right? Index funds to bech nahi sakte. Right? Index fund is not an India allocation standalone. A fund manager is invested in India because it's a part of the index. Because there is a trade war, India's weightage will not go down in an index. Right? Because indexes are computed on the free float market cap as a relative to the world. So since we have given away 4 lakh crores, if we had not given this away, mind you, this could have given you a 10% circuit down, because all of valuations were high, money had not flown out. So a news power of a news depends on when it came and what happened preceding 6 months. Preceding 6 months to the trade war, we have for almost a year, we've been giving away outflows to all these fluid FIIs who have come for a short-term Indian allocation, non-index fund allocation. So I would not see that. I would see every blip as a buying opportunity. On your show, I've said 22,000 was a screaming buy when most people laughed it out.
Okay, jitna le jana tha le gaye. I think it's only a buying opportunity from here on. Firoz, thank you very much for taking time out for joining us on the show this morning. And moving on now, when trade becomes a tool of politics, economies suffer, especially the smaller ones. And that's the cautionary tale Bangladesh is writing for itself. In the latest episode of escalating trade tensions, India has curbed imports from Bangladesh through land ports across northeast, a move that affects nearly $770 million worth of exports, over 40% of Bangladesh's total exports. Now, at the center of this friction is Bangladesh's most prized economic engine, its ready-made garments. Now, in 2024, Bangladesh exported over $660 million worth of garments alone to India, mostly through land ports in states like Tripura and Assam. These routes are critical because they offer faster and cheaper access to Indian markets and beyond. And now, with India rerouting these imports exclusively through seaports, Bangladeshi exporters are forced to rely on longer, costlier sea export. Now, these changes isn't just about shipping logistics. It threatens the competitiveness of Bangladeshi garments, particularly for major global brands like H&M and Zara, who depend on just-in-time delivery models and low production costs. When time is money and margins are razor thin, every extra dollar spent on transport counts. For an export-led economy, which is Bangladesh, where garments account for nearly 84% of total exports and employ nearly 4 million workers, mostly women, such disruptions are far from trivial. Now, India's action is a direct response to Bangladesh's increasing trade barriers against Indian exports, as well as a shift in Dhaka's diplomatic focus towards China. Dhaka's earlier restricted, remember, Indian exports like rice, yarn and FMCG goods via land. The friction further intensified after Bangladesh's interim chief advisor to the government, Muhammad Yunus, made controversial remarks during a visit to China. Yunus described India's northeastern states as a landlocked region with no access to ocean, a comment which was seen as undermining the region's connectivity. Now, Bangladesh's decision to challenge India comes at a precarious time for the country. Bangladesh has just graduated out of the least developed country category, which means that the preferred zero duty access it enjoyed so far in markets like India, Europe and the US is set to fade. To remain competitive, it needs more open trade, not less. But instead of wooing partners, it's building barriers. Worse, by letting political and religious hardliners influence economic policy, Dhaka risks isolating itself from a region that was once its biggest growth enabler. Now, India hasn't banned any imports, it has simply altered the mode of entry. This is what we call a teaser, in effect, a political nudge, a message that reciprocity cannot be one-sided. For Bangladesh, this isn't just about garments or geopolitics, it's about the future of its economy. Alienating India, its second largest export destination, may win short-term headlines, but it risks long-term pain. Bangladesh may want to rethink which side of the equation it wants to be on. And before we close, let's quickly take a look at the top stories we're tracking globally. US President Donald Trump faces pushback from his own party as he pushes to revive his tax bill on Capitol Hill. And Trump picks up the design and team for his $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense shield. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio tells the Congress that US is not retreating from global stage as he battles criticism for cuts to foreign aid. Elon Musk says he's going to stay back on as Tesla CEO but will scale back political donations amid scrutiny. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the new EU deal will restore Britain's global standing post-Brexit. In a major diplomatic shift, the EU agrees to lift key economic sanctions on Syria. And China slashes interest rates to cushion the blow from escalating trade tensions with the US. Foxconn partners with NVIDIA to build a massive AI data center in Taiwan. And Japan's Honda makes a pivotal shift from electric vehicles to hybrid models in a major shift in strategy. All that and more after this very short break.
Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News 9's pick of the week, don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News 9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
Businesses are primarily in India known by their owners.
When you start a business, you don't realize how much you're putting the entire family at risk.
The trust is a big element.
And a typical symbol of trust is usually a banyan tree. And I used to, in my early days, wonder that how will a young company look like a banyan tree?
When you brought in this beauty product, Nykaa, you tried to make women look beautiful for themselves.
It's a message to women. Let the spotlight of your life be on you. And for that, we wanted her to be as confident as she wants.
India desperately needs that shift in mindset where women would be leading from the front.
They're risk takers and they do take open-ended risk, and a belief in yourself that you don't allow others to destabilize you and you keep pursuing your path.
Watch Radico Presents Duologue with Paruntas Season 3 featuring Falguni Nair at these times on News 9. News 9, English news as it should be.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. US President Donald Trump is urging unity among Republicans to pass a sweeping tax cut bill central to his domestic agenda. In a high-stakes, closed-door meeting on Tuesday, Donald Trump warned GOP lawmakers in the House not to demand more changes to the bill, which proposes major tax cuts and restricted medical aid eligibility rules. Now, he issued a warning not to make Medicaid even harder to access for low-income Americans. The bill's fate now hangs on whether the remaining Republican skeptics fall in line.
I think anybody that didn't support it as a Republican, I would consider to be a fool. It's a great bill. It's a great bill for America, more importantly. This is the greatest bill that will ever, I think it's the most important bill this country just about has ever done in terms of size and scope. That's why we call it the great, big, beautiful deal. I mean, it really is. The bill is, I think it's going to be one of the most important. It's the biggest tax reduction in history, biggest regulation reduction in history. Incredible for Medicaid, for Medicare.
And Donald Trump unveiled a $175 billion worth missile defense initiative known as the Golden Dome, with a clear focus on countering threats from China and Russia. In a high-profile White House announcement, Donald Trump confirmed the U.S. Space Force General Michael Gultein will lead the ambitious project. The president called the Golden Dome a centerpiece of his national security vision, signaling a bold new chapter in US's defense strategy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here in the Oval Office, one of the great places of the world, as we make a historic announcement about the Golden Dome Missile Defense Shield. That's something we want, and Ronald Reagan wanted it many years ago, but they didn't have the technology, but it's something we're going to have. We're going to have it at the highest level. I'm also pleased to report that the One Big Beautiful Bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed. This afternoon, I'm also announcing that I will appoint, very importantly, General Gutlein to lead the ambitious new effort as the direct reporting program manager for the Golden Dome.
And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is pushing back against criticism that Trump administration is retreating from the global stage. Testifying before Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Tuesday, Rubio defended deep cuts to foreign aid and diplomatic budgets, insisting that Washington is not withdrawing from world affairs. The remarks come amid bipartisan concerns over what some lawmakers view as a diminishing American presence abroad. Take a look.
We are engaged in the world, but we're going to be engaged in a world that makes sense and that's smart.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Tuesday insisted that the Trump administration was not withdrawing from the world. That's as Rubio fought criticism by some members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee of the administration's cuts to foreign aid and diplomatic budgets.
You're not going to like all the changes, but I want you to know what the intent of the changes are. It is not to dismantle American foreign policy, and it is not to withdraw us from the world. Because I just hit 18 countries in 18 weeks. That doesn't sound like much of a withdrawal.
Rubio said that many of the programs he has cut did not serve U.S. interests, and that Washington would remain the world's most generous donor of humanitarian aid.
I didn't ask Senator. Please let the Secretary have you.
In a sometimes feisty first testimony as Secretary of State, Rubio was challenged over his role in the administration's crackdown on immigration, Trump's engagement with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the decision to prioritize the resettlement in the U.S. of white South Africans versus refugees from elsewhere. Here's Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen.
And while you've turned away from a genocide in Sudan and invented one in South Africa, you teamed up with President Trump to throw the Ukrainian people under the bus and have been played like a fiddle by Vladimir Putin. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant statement, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
On Russia, Rubio said Putin had not received any real concessions in the U.S. effort to initiate talks to end the war in Ukraine. In an exchange with Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen, Rubio defended Trump, saying he was trying to end the war.
And what the president's trying to do is end a war. He's trying to end a bloody, costly war that neither side can win, and people are dying every single day. And so, but this notion that I don't, what has Putin gained throughout this? He hasn't gotten a single concession. He hasn't gotten a single sanction lifted.
Republicans have praised Rubio, who has become a crucial figure in the Trump administration. He currently is also serving as Trump's acting national security advisor, the USAID administrator, and the acting archivist of the United States.
And moving on, Elon Musk says he's committed to staying on as Tesla CEO and that he's pulling back on political spending to ease concerns over his dual roles in business and in politics. The billionaire made the announcement while addressing growing scrutiny over his involvement with the Trump administration. Listen into what he said.
Do you see yourself, and are you committed to still being the chief executive of Tesla in 5 years' time?
Yes.
No doubt about that at all.
Well, no, I might die.
Okay, short of that.
I can't be here if I'm dead. In terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
And moving on, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Tuesday that the UK is back on the world stage after securing a major deal with the EU and the US as well as India. In a historic post-Brexit move, Britain and the EU have agreed to slash paperwork and ease border checks on plant and animal products while maintaining high food standards. The deal is a part of a broader push to reset UK-EU relations and boost Britain's global economic footprint.
The principles we took into the negotiations are clear and simple. Does it drive down bills? Does it drive up jobs? Does it strengthen our borders? And in each case, the answer is resoundingly yes. These deals release us from the tired arguments of the past and, as an independent sovereign nation, allow us to seize the opportunities of the future. A clear message sent across the globe that Britain is back on the world stage.
The European Union is now lifting economic sanctions on Syria following a landmark decision by its foreign ministers in Brussels on Tuesday. This is followed by Trump's decision to ease US sanctions on the West Asian country. Now, EU Foreign Policy Chief emphasized the shift is reversible and conditional on progress, noting that there's no peace without economic recovery. Take a look.
On Syria, ministers agreed to lift all economic sanctions while maintaining those related to Assad regime and human rights violations. This decision is reversible and conditional also on progress. There can be no peace without the path to economic recovery, and we all need a stable Syria. Is everything really ideal there? No, it is not. It's very clear, but I think we need to give the Syrian people a chance.
Ukraine has applauded European Union's latest move, a 17th round of sanctions against Russia aimed at tightening economic squeeze on Moscow. Ukrainian foreign minister welcomed the new measure and is now urging the G7 nations to go further by cutting the price cap on Russian seaborne oil from $60 down to $30 per barrel. Listen in.
Welcome, and we are thankful for adoption of the 17th package of sanctions. We need such strong steps now. We need to pressure Russia. We also must step beyond 17th package. Oil price cap and our point of view, our position, reasonable price cap $30. Also, we need to pressure and we need to impact sanctions on banking system, on banking infrastructure, Russian banking infrastructure, including central bank.
In a significant monetary move, China has cut its benchmark lending rates for the first time since October. The decision comes alongside major state banks lowering deposit rates. Now, these steps reflect Beijing's efforts to stimulate the economy as it faces headwinds from the ongoing trade tensions with the United States. This report has the details.
Trade war fears are hanging over China's economy, and Tuesday saw Beijing policymakers play their latest hand in response. The country's central bank cut its benchmark one-year loan prime rate by 0.1 of a percentage point to 3%. Its five-year rate, key to setting mortgage prices, fell by the same amount. Earlier in the day, several of the country's top commercial banks also cut their deposit interest rates. That was seen as guiding smaller lenders to make similar reductions. One economist told Reuters that all the rate cuts are meant to boost lending and stimulate consumption. The moves are part of a package of measures announced before China and the US agreed a truce on tariffs at talks in Geneva. That deal spurred analysts to raise their forecasts for Chinese growth this year, but huge uncertainty remains. Nomura chief China economist Ting Lu said it would still be quite challenging for Beijing to hit its 5% growth target for the year, unless policymakers step in with more stimulus and reforms. Figures out earlier in the week showed new bank loans tumbling and home prices staying flat, pointing again to areas of weakness in China's economy.
And moving on, Japan's Honda Motors is scaling back its electric vehicle investment as global demand cools, pivoting instead to capitalize on rising interests in hybrid cars. CEO of Honda announced the automaker is now trimming its electrification and software budget through 2030 from 10 trillion yen to 7 trillion, around $48 billion. Honda now targets sales of up to 2.3 million hybrids by 2030 and plans to roll out 13 new hybrid models starting 2027. It's also working on a new hybrid system for larger vehicles set to debut later this decade. And that's all we have on the show. News and updates will continue on the other side. You were watching Morning Brief at 9.
He plainly tried to internationalize the Kashmir issue.
We know as a matter of fact that it was Pakistan that ran to America.
West seems to disregard anything that doesn't affect it directly.